think there's this phenomenon where people really want to hoard the data as much as possible, and they don't even necessarily have a plan, right? They just figure, well, if I just collect as much as I can now, it'll eventually be useful some way, right? And we'll just figure it out. E-commerce people that we're talking about, so they're sophisticated on some level, but we don't want people to have to come in and be a data scientist, and we don't want people to have to come in and do all of this development work. You should be able to come in, get the answers that you want on your site, and be able to get sound statistical results in a beautiful UX. And like that was always kind of the genesis of Shoplift.
That's Austin Goldman. I'm Sean McCarthy, and this is the Lucky Orange Show. Austin Goldman's the CEO and co-founder of Shoplift, which is the first A/B testing platform purpose-built for Shopify stores. Shoplift is leading the charge to help teams do experimentation better. That means faster, smoother, less time to iterate, less time to launch, less pain to remove a test and experiment that's not working. They've got some really innovative features. We dove deep into Lift Assist. We dove deep into their philosophy around data, making decisions, the future of e-commerce shopping, a lot of really cool stuff in there that I love talking about. So I had a great time talking to Austin. I hope you enjoy this chat. I think that it's never been easier to collect data. People continue to just pipe in data and integrate things and collect mountains of data, really. But decisions still kind of seem to come down to gut feel, maybe more often than they should. One, do you agree with that? And two, if you do, why do you think people are still making optimization decisions based on gut feel when they have access to all this data?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first of all, Sean, I just want to say thank you for having me. And it's an honor to join you. I've been following, obviously, Lucky Orange is an OG, been following you guys for a while and been following you for a while in your podcast. So it's great. It's an honor to be on. But it's a really great point about, the mountains of data people collect. It's almost kind of an inside joke that we have. I think there's this phenomenon where people really want to hoard the data as much as possible, and they don't even necessarily have a plan, right? They don't want to think about how it's structured. They don't, know even what it means, or like they just figure, well, if I just collect as much as I can now, it'll eventually be useful some way, right? And we'll just figure it out later. And I think, they kind of, what they run into is they have this dog that catches the car problem, right? It's like, now I have this data. Well, what do I actually do with it? And I think once they actually, figure out, hey, here's something I want to do with it, they run into a few main issues. Either, because they didn't have this intentionality to start, the schema isn't set up, in the way that they need it to, so it doesn't even tell them what they want. They aren't getting the complete picture. Maybe they're missing metadata or whatever. Or there's just fundamental biases in the way that the data was collected in the first place, or, tools aren't talking to each other. There's a million things that can go wrong, right? So I think, the bottom line is I think you really want to be intentional about what you're trying to measure, really think through, what is the thing that I'm actually optimizing for? Because I think when it comes to collecting data, you can measure any number of things, but what's actually going to be useful for you, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think even in that, part of what you're talking about is when it comes time to make the decision, if your act isn't together, things aren't organized properly, things weren't collected properly to begin with, you might be just up a creek anyway. So that might not be the time to say, okay, how can we fix this problem? And then there might even be, a data literacy thing where the team is interpreting metrics differently, or, what is going into our CAC? What is going into this number? Maybe there's a standard approach, but how are we doing it? And so there might be something that can be done there to improve that. I don't want to get too far down the road without giving you a chance to kind of describe where Shoplift takes all of this. I know that it's, focused on testing and focused on optimization. And in looking through the website, I saw some phrases that kind of resonated and things that might help drive this. So like you guys use the phrase iterate faster and take the guesswork out, and all these things that I think people are like, oh yeah, I want more of that. And you're sliding this scale towards these things that people want. Can you tell me what those phrases might mean to you, and how that process is possible with Shoplift?
Yeah. So for those, listeners who might not know, Shoplift is the first A/B testing platform that's natively integrated to Shopify. We're the first Shopify Plus certified A/B testing platform. The whole idea is to be plug and play, completely native to Shopify, all of the power and none of the hassle of like the manual configuration. And for those who have used legacy testing platforms. All of those data problems that I was talking about, I mean, that's how you can run into those, right? Because you didn't configure the script properly, or didn't attach it to the right part of your site, or you like all these numbers of things can go wrong when you're dealing with all of these things that bump into each other. And with Shoplift, the whole idea is it's natively integrated. So we collect I think we're at about 163 unique metrics that we measure on your site. It integrates with other data sources like Shopify and GA and various data warehouses as well. So you can make that picture even more complete. And we've worked a lot with Shopify directly when we were up in Toronto and, met the rest of your team. We were actually talking with Shopify. We had some good conversations about what we can do to, make it even more robust. But what we've done with Shoplift is it's a completely painless one-click install. All of the data is right there for you. So it's very robust.
Yeah, that's super cool. I know that there's several pain points that exist in this testing and optimization space, and being natively built and going after kind of all these just little things that slow down testing, that make it harder to pull off is a really big deal. One of the challenges that I see coming up regularly is, and this happens in my own testing even too, is like, I can test anything. So where do I start? Now, obviously having a great data structure in place and a great approach to how we read out things is a good starting point. There's this like metric, there's this rubric that I think people would traditionally use in grading test opportunities, is like, how much effort is it going to take to develop this test? And that's one thing that goes into that prioritization rubric. It feels like what you guys are doing is removing some of that friction and the difficulty of developing and deploying variants. So how are you thinking about like prioritization when it comes to optimization? Where does like past testing and data fit into this, and how does prioritization work?
Yeah, Sean, that's a really good question. You know Shoplift well, you know our space well. Any good test starts with a hypothesis. I think people can kind of overcomplicate it sometimes. You really need to like think about your business and talk to customers, review heat maps. I'll give that plug to Lucky Orange. But you need to really, I think, start with the baseline understanding of what you think, could be optimized in your business, because ultimately as an operator in your business, you're closer to it than anyone. You're closer to the customer. And so you need to come to it with this sense of, what your business might need, or, the feedback that you're getting. I think you obviously want to prioritize by impact and difficulty. But I think where a lot of brands go wrong is, you want to optimize by impact and difficulty, but you can end up with like two conceivably high impact things that you're just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall, right? And it's just like, okay, well, we're going to do one thing on the cart and one thing on the homepage, and there's no structure to it, right? Like what you want to do is really say, what are the answers that we're trying to get about our business? What are the things that if you can get insights that kind of compound, and your wins, by the way, can compound, and you can really put a testing roadmap together to say, here are the things that we actually want to get answers on, and then we can go on to the cart, and then we can go on to the, the other parts. That's how you can really build that flywheel and get really powerful results that can compound over time. And I think the roadmap is part of it. Obviously, Shoplift, to say our piece is, by being so integrated, you can iterate much faster. You can, rather than having the, 2 weeks in design, 2 weeks in dev, like that can just go on forever, right? And with Shoplift, it's all instant, and you can get that flywheel turning much faster. But it really does come back to the roadmap and really being intentional about the testing. And if you're just scatterbrained and trying to do too many things at once, you can end up with results, but maybe you only got the tip of the iceberg on that thing that you wanted to test, right? Or maybe you got something that told you one thing and you interpreted it a different way. So if you're really intentional about that roadmap, I think that's the key to success. And our incredible CSMs at Shoplift do work with some of the biggest brands in the world on just that. So that's definitely something that we spend a lot of time thinking about. And you just want to have that systematic approach.
Yeah. And I think that kind of there's a lot of meetings that happen with well-intentioned teams where the analytics might still be a little foggy and everybody has an opinion. And so how do we get to the point where we're optimizing in the right direction, and not only with speed but with velocity, like we're heading in a direction. And I think that having that roadmap and having that intention built from just like the top level of what is the business trying to achieve right now, where are we trying to grow, how are we trying to optimize, that leads to smarter testing, better order of prioritization, and iteration, and the right mix of small swings, big swings, all these things that people always talk about in experimentation.
Yeah, and the
um,
piece of Shoplift that we've kept building out too is we capture all of this data from all of these different stores, and within your own store, the past tests and the other data that you have can influence recommendations, and that is actually a feature that we've built called Lift Assist. That not only gives you these recommendations, but will then generate these new assets. So the whole game is how can we take you from idea to execution and the littlest amount of time as possible, and then from execution to implementation, right? Those are the two big
yeah.
places where people get caught up. And so we've kind of made this cycle where any e-com person, any marketer can come in and be the single stakeholder and really set themselves free to go and execute on this stuff.
So Lift Assist, as I understand it, ostensibly generates features that go on the site that are then tested to improve whatever metric you're chasing. I think there's a couple of things in there that I'm curious about. People arrive to websites with expectations of how a website works. The elephant in the room being like people shop on Amazon. So when they shop there, they have a specific way that they add to cart. They have a specific way that they check out and these things like that. With Shopify sites, they might use Shop Pay regularly. People are more and more used to that. Knowing that people visit dozens or hundreds of websites a day, they have expectations that they're building up in that experience. How do you decide what shows up in Lift Assist? And it might benefit somebody listening to better understand specifically how Lift Assist works, but how is the team going about saying, we think that a spinning wheel with deals on it is something that should show up
Right.
in Lift Assist versus any multitude of other potential ideas that you could work into a website?
Sure. So, taking a step back and just like, what is the concept behind Lift Assist? So, historically, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, but basically, you would do this research on your site, analyze past tests. You would then, come up with what you wanted as, like, let's say you're the CRO expert, and then you go to the designer mocks that up. That takes a few weeks. Then the developer, creates those designs in your website, then you QA it, then and that one cycle just for that one idea takes a very long time, right? It could take 4, 6, 8 weeks. With Shoplift, and what we've done with Lift Assist is, what if you could get that idea to market much faster, get it either, I mean, maybe the whole thing doesn't even work, and then you've already spent that 6 weeks or
Yeah.
whatever it is, that's down the drain. And so the whole idea with Lift Assist is, if you can get more shots on goal, iterate much faster. What Lift Assist does is, you have that idea is actually recommended by Shoplift. So based on the data coming into your site, Lift Assist will say, hey, maybe try a countdown timer to drive more urgency. And then not only will it give you that kind of idea to do a countdown timer, it will actually take your brand styles and then generate this new feature that gets deployed on your site in real time, that you can then experiment or personalize to any number of different shoppers, and it builds it for you in real time. And it's not just some widget that's like, I think sometimes you hear personalization and it's just like some recommended product that sits on top of your site and kind of
Yeah.
isn't really part of your site. We've worked with Shopify to actually deploy this inside Shopify. So if it works, it's a one-click, applied. If it's a winner, it's now yours. It's part of your Shopify theme. So it's really, you can always go back later, and if you have developers, you can work with them on some custom development that's like maybe you take that idea even further, right? And you create something else. But the whole idea with Lift Assist is, it gives you this great feedback loop where you can go down that path much faster, and you can actually get the proof of concept out into the wild.
There's a lot of benefit, it feels like, to what you're talking about. I think the coolest thing for me there is, like, it's being driven by the context of your website. So it's not like a team sitting in a room saying, have we tried a countdown timer?
Right.
It's data driven.
Right.
As much as we want to embrace that phrase, it's saying like, we think based on what's happening with your visitors and your flow, you need to build more urgency or whatever the signals would be. One other area you talked about, personalization, I think I think you mentioned personalization. I think in e-commerce, if we dare to flash forward a decade, maybe even less, like the AI is the thing. This is a podcast, so we have to talk about AI. I think one of the biggest areas and potentially most enjoyable areas is for potential for AI is with segmentation and personalization in the shopping experience. And like much of what we see even now with all the innovation that's happening is still an e-commerce experience that's 30 years old, 40 or 30 years old. How are you thinking about AI? Like, and we use the term AI, we use the words AI and LLM very loosely these days. How do you think about segmentation and personalization and potential with AI and the data driving it, and how you think that can create value for people using tools like Shoplift in the future?
It's a really good question, and naturally something we think about all the time. If we like the term personalization, we've been talking about personalization for, 20 years at this point, 25 years at this point. Yeah. And, it means different things to different people, right? If it can mean, that widget that I mentioned earlier that says, hey, try this product with that product. It can be, hey, it's, rainy in Kansas City today, or like find a local tax accountant in your zip code, or, it's like there's all these different like layers of quote unquote personalization. And like, what are we really trying to do with personalization? We're trying to deliver the optimal experience to that shopper in that moment. So every shopper gets that ideal experience. And what does the ideal experience mean? It is the, if you're rolling out the carpet for any, any shopper, you're basically telling your brand story, and you don't tell your story the same way to every person, right? You need to tell it differently to someone who maybe they've been with you, they've spent thousands of dollars on your website. It's like, you don't have to tell them, about the value props of these different products. You need to tell them about maybe the new releases, or maybe you need to, someone who's brand new, shout out to Aaliyah, Sean from Aaliyah, who's doing these great pop-ups where I don't want to say make you, but they make you learn about the brand's story to get a discount. That's a great tool, right? And so it's like everyone needs these different contexts when you come to the website. So that's today. When we talk about like where we're going, I think, obviously agents are going to be more part of, the shopping experience. And, just like, frankly, personal shoppers have been a thing in the past, I think that will be proliferated. I think one of the kind of laws that I often think about is like the things that rich people were doing, 5 or 10 years ago are the things that's kind of predictive of where things are going to go, what's going to be democratized. And so I think we're all going to have that kind of personal shopper experience. That being said, your personal shopper can't like browse, seamlessly for your taste, or if they do, then they're going to have to buy a bunch of stuff and return half of it, right? It's like, there's still going to be the sites that you want to go to and explore and analyze, and, how does it really look on the model? Like, and compare different brands to each other. Like, I think the agent will be part of that experience, but really, I think the on-site experience will still have a place, unless you have a really commoditized product, right? If it's, hey, order me, a new set, like a new pack of paper towels, you don't need to go to the PDP for paper towels, right? It's like no one cares about that. But if you need something more, personal or more sophisticated, that's all. I think the site's always going to have a place for that. And as far as like what we're doing with Shoplift, I can't say too much on this, but we have some really exciting stuff coming out soon. I mean, we already have some of the most powerful segmentation logic on the market, and we're always adding more. So on the personalization side, that's one piece. But with AI, there's going to be kind of another layer to that. And at the end of the day, as I said, it's all about it takes two to tango. You have the shopper and you have the site. How can you create that ideal, magic moment for both parties?
Right, right. Yeah, and I mean, it's as tech creeps into and it evolves the shopping experience, so does the optimization side. So, you're talking about the kind of parallel paths of Shoplift's activity and then, what the websites look like and the shopping experience looks like. It feels like there's this sliding scale in the optimization process of human involvement. And I even think about this with tools like Lucky Orange, where today and historically, a lot of our tools are pretty demanding on the user to find insight. You have to know what you're doing. It's not extremely difficult, but you have to know what you're doing. You have to know what you're looking for. You have to know what patterns to look for. You have to be investigating something. And so maybe 100% of the effort and demand on finding insight is on the user. We're continuing to try and build things that slide that scale towards the tool doing more work for you. It feels like Shoplift is pushing in that direction too. In your direct space is to say that we want to push the slider in the direction of tech running the show to some degree. I mean, things like Lift Assist really come in and say, we recommend this, and then we can deploy it quickly. All of that said, there's still elements of the optimization process that today obviously still include a human involvement. When you think about where these tools go, maybe in the near future or distant future, wherever you want to take this, do you think there's part of the optimization process that will always have to be human, or do we look at a future where websites just optimize themselves? The immediate red team to that has always been like, well, then all the websites will be the same, and like, well, that's not going to like, you're still optimizing the specific context of a specific site getting traffic that it does. Do you think there's places where humans will always be involved in the optimization process?
It's a really good question, Sean. I think, the ethos with I mean, every product has like its own, different kind of way that they want to relate to the user, right? You can be a product that, wants to give as much flexibility as possible. You can do as many different things, but it's like really, you have to be kind of a geeky power user to really like get all of the things out of it. You can be, the Apple route, which is just like the most refined, but it's kind of, a cage system. I think what we've done with Shoplift is more the latter, where we want these are e-commerce people that we're talking about. So they're sophisticated on some level, but like, we don't want people to have to come in and be a data scientist. And we don't want people to have to come in and like do all of this development work. Like, you should be able to come in, get the answers that you want on your site, show the content that you want to the users that you want to show it to, and be able to get sound statistical results in a beautiful UX. And like, that was always kind of the genesis of Shoplift. Like, what if we could deliver it in this like incredible way where, humans do not have to do all of those little setup steps. And I think we've kind of rolled that product out in phases, right? So the first one was just like, yeah, let's solve those like legacy A/B testing pain points. Then we're like, well, we can take it one step further. Then we went into Lift Assist and, we started recommending things. We had this great, engine that will create these, take your brand styles and create these sections for you in your own site. I think where that's going, to your point about, the self-optimizing storefront, I think that's coming. I think, obviously the marketer on any team is going to kind of cringe at that and say like, well, it's going to be haywire. You're going to have, all kinds of things. I think that's really something that we're working on, is how can we give marketers and e-com people and, whoever else is kind of overseeing the site, the control to say, here are the, put some fence posts around it. Here are the parameters that we want to optimize around. Here's what we're actually trying to achieve. And then let, machines do their thing, because the machines, you're exactly right. They're here. They're going to take over. It's just a matter of, what are the levers of control? What are the knobs and dials that you can turn to make sure that, it's ultimately the experience that you want. I think, we have customers like, like a lot in the apparel industry, like Kith is a great example, where it's like Kith breaks a lot of rules. They have very small text. They have very, it's like no CRO expert would go in and say like, this is the optimal thing, but Kith is a huge business and that's developed on taste, that's developed on instinct. And like, they have bucked a lot of trends to get to where they are. And so taste and like creating rules based on humans. There's always going to be part of the process, and that's where the magic happens. But I think, being able to use machines for what they do best, which is, plus infinity on terms of, the number of things you can try and how fast you can try them and all of that, that's where, machines are really going to be part of the process.
It feels like there's this point where optimization just turns into personalization. So like if the ultimate optimization is a real one-to-one personalized shopping experience, then like, yeah, you're not going to be able to do that manually. If the tools can get you to a point where you're serving a version of an experience, whether it's a page or a full-on shopping experience, based on what you know about somebody, and what you know about somebody continues to grow and expand, then like it's not it's just personalization, really.
That's right.
And as long as your brand shows up, if your brand wants to speak in tiny font, as long as that's still in there and people say, yeah, this is cool, and it still puts out whatever, brand vibe you're trying to put out there. If the ultimate goal is the conversion and all the, guardrail metrics, of course, then it's really just personalization at that ultimate kind of peak of things.
Well, human brains are linear, right? Like we can't, like the best that we can do is say, all right, well, everyone who came from Facebook, we're going to group them, or it's like we can't, like all the different permutations and connections that a computer could make about, like maybe all of these people have something in common that we have no idea, or maybe, yesterday it was that user should see one thing, or today it's a different, like there's so many different variables, way more than even the best human could possibly determine. And so it's only natural that that's what computers are going to be better at.
In a past life, I was working on a data project for senior health insurance leads, and we appended a bunch of data to a huge list to try and figure out patterns and marketing opportunities. And there was a strong correlation in this one group of people that we had ended up closing with owning a 75 horsepower or greater outboard motor. And we're like, what the hell do we do with that? Do we throw boats on the landing page? I don't know. But definitely things that we don't look for and don't know are there to a different scale. As you look forward, I know that I mentioned before we hopped on here that this is likely publishing after Camp Commerce, which is a sick event coming up. Aside from that, because this might be up after that, what else has you excited as you look forward towards the rest of the year? Obviously, we've got the huge shopping season coming in e-commerce. What has you excited on your side?
Yeah, I'm super excited for peak season. I think we've all, it's been a weird year in e-com with, I don't even want to say the T word, but there's been a lot going on. So I think everyone's really looking forward to Black Friday, Cyber Monday. We have some great content, some great tooling coming out for that. You'll be able to do all sorts of stuff. So I don't want to, break the seal on that too early, but some exciting stuff coming out. We'll be there, working hand in hand with brands. So it's going to be a really exciting time of year. It's a really good chance to kind of get, before the big wave hits, before, you're kind of getting into that late October, early November kind of frenzy. It's a really good time in September to get your house in order. If you do want to, try things, optimize things, like that's a great time to do it. Because, you don't get to redo Black Friday. Right. It's a great time to lean in on that.
That's so true. Well, Austin, thank you so much for carving out time. I really appreciate the chance to chat. And I think the charge that you guys are leading is really great to see. Shopify is doing well. It's August 6th. Shopify stock today, for some reason, is up 20%, which is killer. So I guess it's a great day to be in the Shopify ecosystem. Where can people connect with you? Where can people learn more about Shoplift and follow along? And if they want to give it a try, how can they get started?
Yeah, we offer everyone a free trial, 14-day free trial. For listeners of this podcast, we can even extend that to 30 days. So if you want to get in touch with us at Shoplift.ai, feel free to schedule a demo. Reach out to me, Austin at Shoplift.ai. I'm an open book. Please get in touch. And looking forward to helping out.
Yeah, amazing. Well, Austin, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Cool. Thanks, Sean.